Hello, welcome everybody to Sonic Talk, episode number 405. Been a couple of weeks since my last meeting. That sounds like the sort of thing that you say at the beginning of an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, which is not what this is. I'd just like to point that out right now. Although my voice does sound a little bit like I might have been up all night. It's just I've had a cold. I caught it on the train on the Eurostar on the way back from Brussels, which was where I was last week. I was away... I have to say, Brussels is a fantastic city. I'd be back there like a shot. Really, really enjoyed it there. And I want to say thank you very much to my sister-in-law who put us up. She's also an MEP, so I got to sort of swank about at the European Parliament dressed massively inappropriately. I sort of walked through the door and thought, shorts and a T-shirt, not such a good move today. Everybody's, dressed up and kind of being politicky. And we went to the members' restaurant, had a nice and then I sat in on a committee meeting where we saw the Brazilian agricultural minister addressing the parliament and then questions and saw how the whole thing worked. I'll tell you, the one thing that is impressive is the amount of resources that go into running the place and the sort of how difficult it is to grasp what's going on there. But I do know that lots of really good things go on there. My sister-in-law is a Green MEP, so she has that kind of political sway. And they have a lot of power there because they are sort of the conscience, if you see what I mean. I'm rambling. I'm getting way off topic. But anyway, I'm back. Thanks for watching. Welcome, everybody in the chat room. We do have a show sponsor as well. iZotope, of course, will be doing their usual giveaway. We've got Ozone 6.1 for a lucky winner to give away later. We've also got a winner from episode 404, File Not Found, as we, I think we titled the show. Anyway, let's introduce some guests, shall we? I'm going to start with Dave Spears, who's there with GeForce Software in the synth cave. And the sun is shining. I think we might actually have summer. What do you think, Dave?
It's looking promising.
It does look promising, doesn't it?
God, the last couple of days have been incredibly windy up here.
Oh, yeah. No, we've had the same thing.
So now it's about time that the sun came out and I'll just roast.
Well, you can open the windows now. Of course, if you've been watching Sonic Talk for some time, you'll know that Dave started out life in a sort of subterranean basement-type garage, which, to all intents and purposes, is what it looks like is where he is. But there is actually a window now, and he's able to see a view and stuff. Anyway, Dave Spears, course makers of fine software. You're having a sale. Did I see something go past the other day? You having a sale on at the moment?
Oh, yeah, we're doing a 50% off Imp 2 for... I think it's a week, 2 weeks, might be 2 weeks. I can't remember.
Well, there you go.
We don't do it very often, so yeah, if anybody wants it, now's the time.
Doing it proper. Well, Dave, thank you very much for joining us. A pleasure to have you aboard. And let's flip to the other side of the M5 corridor to Mr. Robbie Bronneman, who's there in Robot Studios. Robbie is, of course, a producer, artist, and probably in between shows where he does the musical direction and kind of runs the tech side of the Howard Jones touring machine. Well, in fact, without him, I think it's pretty much going to be a DAT machine and Howard, which wouldn't go down very well if they do have such things. How are you, Robbie? Yeah. You well? You've been away, have you?
Yeah, been in America and then back, started our festival season this weekend, gone, and then playing Bristol on Sunday. Ashton Court, Ashton Gate, wherever his arena place in Bristol.
Oh right, I might try and get over to that if there's an in.
I think Gaz is coming along, so I'm sure we can sort that out. And then playing Saturday in Manchester at the Manchester Apollo.
Oh right, so back to back.
And then Monday for another week.
Right, back to the States.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Last time we saw you, you were just about to fly over. You had a B rig because you have a very specific rig, and you were saying that to fly all your stuff across the Atlantic was getting crazy. So your last session in the States was you showing up with a day to spare to make sure the rig worked. How did that go?
That's coming up on Monday.
Oh right, okay.
That's coming up, yeah. So I'll watch this space. I'll let you know on that.
Right. Well, I'm sure it'll be absolutely fine. Anyway, Robbie, so thank you very much for joining us. Oh, I should say, a nice, fulsome chat room as we are... Oh, my God, that's an enormous amount. People are obviously having a little bit of Sonic Talk withdrawal. It was only a week, chaps. We try and keep it consistent, but sometimes, you got to go when you got to go. Anyway, let's flip over to Glastonbury, a little bit further up the road, where we've got Mr. Mark Tinley. Marktinley.co.uk, sound artist, creative thinker, and master of haircuts. How are you?
Is that what I am?
Well, no, it's one of many things.
I'm all right. I've got something very exciting in my garden. And I'm going to buy some waterproof microphones so that I can mic it up.
Okay.
I joined the Somerset Beekeeping Association.
Right.
And I've learned how to keep bees. And,
that was quick.
Yeah, I know. And my mentor rang me up and he said, "Are you ready for a swarm?" And I went, "What does that mean?" So we went off to this a local village and we captured a swarm and put it in a box, brought it home and literally threw it into a hive in my back garden. You take the bees and you kind of shake them in and they all went in the hive. So now I'm gonna mic them up. I'm not quite sure where to put the mics yet. I mean, either on the
a single bee or the entire hive.
I think I'll mic the entire hive.
Need a lot of mics.
I mean, it could be. No. Well, there's 50,000 bees in there in the height of summer, so that could get expensive, especially if I used Neumann U87. Well, there wouldn't be enough room for them anyway. But I kind of fancy capturing some inside the hive kind of
that sounds interesting.
Activity kind of noises and seeing if I can capture anything more interesting than bzzz.
Here's a question for you. Do bees in the UK buzz at 50 hertz and in the US buzz at 60 hertz? Is there a difference?
I don't know. I should become a professor of bees or something, and I should write a white paper on bee sounds, shouldn't I, or something?
Yeah, I think
I could do a Kickstarter and everything. Yeah, it could
Mark
be really
B. Tinley. We could you could have a middle name.
So forget the wasp.
Hey, yeah. There we go. There's another. We'll have any more winged instrument. Well, we've got bee, we've got the wasp and the gnat. I don't know if there are any other winged instruments type synthesizers. Let's ask Gaz Williams from Bristol, a professional bass player and music technologist. And in fact, we've just shot a thing with the Korg Little Bits Synth Pro kit yesterday, which I've just put together. So I'll send you a rough edit of that. Anyway, how are you, Gaz?
Yeah, great. Having loads of fun. The projects I'm working on at the moment are just so much fun. So one of those is doing a live soundtrack at the Green Man Festival this year to accompany the Jodorowsky kind of mental mad film, The Holy Mountain. It's probably the craziest film I've ever seen. So we've got the midnight slot on the Friday night. It's going to be such a psychedelic den of immensity. I'm so excited about it. But the cool thing is I'm playing theremin. I'm playing lots of interesting instruments on it. So the actual preparation for it is just like so much fun.
Messing about and waving your hands about.
I had my first real magic time with my Theramini, the Moog Theramini, today, and it got me really excited. I've been running the output out through a bunch of guitar effects pedals and into 2 valve amplifiers spread across the room, and oh yeah.
I wonder what would happen how sensitive is a theremin? If a bee, for instance, flew towards the aerial, would there be some kind of interaction going on there? You see, I'm labouring a theme here.
Well, but there is another story I just wanted to tell about the sad death of my OP1 recently, which Robbie seems to think was deserved, by the way.
If you've seen the performance, you know why.
Oh, I haven't.
There is a video, sadly, online. Actually, it's on my website, but my wife took it, of this rather awful performance, really. It was an improvised performance at a comedy festival thing, and just did this stupid thing. Ended up rolling around with. I had the OP1 on a strap, like a guitar strap, and ended up just, I don't know, maybe being too physical with it.
That sounds like something you could be arrested for. I'm sorry, sir, you'll have to come with us. You've been too physical with a piece of music technology.
I tell you what it was, though. It is the curse of the mini jack. Mini jacks are just,
right angle jack is your friend.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The right angle jack.
That's the way to go. Anyway, well, I'm sorry to hear that, Gaz. I hope maybe you can get it fixed. I mean, I know they're quite difficult to open, but I think if it's just probably a bit of surface mount if you haven't cracked the main PCB. So, well, maybe the thing to do then, what you possibly need is, now here's a link, is a Kosmo desktop synth stand that maybe would be able to mount your OP1 on as well. Don't know if you saw this. It looks very similar to something I've built, but much more elegant for holding things up. You know, for filming and things, we need to kind of lift things up at various degrees. And this has an enormous number of possibilities, and you can also take it apart. Let's see, hold on, it does 2. If I just, there we go, that's being taken, there you go, 2 of them. Just look kind of cool. Sort of thing that you kind of have. I'm going to go to you, Robbie, first, because I know you are a man who enjoys a bit of synthesizer furniture, stands, everything in its place, a place for everything kind of guy. So I'm thinking maybe, you know, this might be something you would be interested in. It's wooden. Is that okay?
Well, you see, I've got a very nice local firm of acrylic manufacturers, and they make me all these lovely little acrylic stands for everything that I can light up Tron style.
So you get the edge lights.
Yeah. So everything's on these little kind of easels that have all got LED stripping all along them, and it all looks very nice. I think it's cool. Yeah, I prefer it if it wasn't wood, perhaps white. Perhaps they'll do some other funky colours, but it's a good idea. It's always a problem, isn't it, with lots of little things in the studio, like that, drum machines and stuff, what to do with them.
Absolutely. I don't know whether anybody else has any other solutions. I mean, Dave, looking at your kind of massive gear amount of stuff there, have you got everything in that kind of stackable stuff, or have you got any specific tips you could give for people who want to mount maybe a small desktop synth somewhere that's not just flat on the desktop? I mean, for whatever reason you might want to. No.
Any tips?
No tips at all. Okay, well, moving on.
No, it's weird. I got rid of my desk because I've got a smaller desk because I needed a bit more space to
put more synths
in. Yeah, exactly.
You found you couldn't walk around the desk anymore.
When I saw this, I thought, this is cool. And then I thought, no, I haven't really got any room anymore. But I'm talking to you via my laptop, which is actually propped up on old VHS boxes.
Yeah, okay.
At the minute. So, yeah, something like this would be pretty good, actually.
Well, that could work. I know, Mark, what do you have any kind of tips for mounting these kind of little desktop things, or is it you going to be picking up a Creamer Cafe Kosmo? It is €50, which seems like a lot of money.
I have. Oh no, that's not it. Can't find it. You know those clear plastic acrylic stands? You can buy them on eBay for about £3 or £4. So you can put things on them, like small things. They're designed for shop displays. If you go on eBay and just look for shop displays, there's all sorts of different things that they have for displaying things like books or cards or crystals in Glastonbury, actually, in shops. And I've got a whole load of those kind of kicking around, and I just build like little, mini villages of things like this kind of thing, these kind of things. This is a weird little mixer that I've got. So they just kind of, or maybe this one, I just seem to have loads of things like that go on these stands around the place. Or go to the local recycling place and buy an office desk, which I also did, which was a bit of a bargain. I don't know about the fact that it's made of wood. I think that would annoy me because I would inevitably chip some of the wood off, and then I wouldn't like it anymore because I'm quite pedantic about keeping everything looking pristine. But then I suppose the problem I've got with my little my clear Perspex stands is that they scratch very easily. So
yeah, well, there is that, and that's also a problem for you, Robbie. Does that mean you have to wear kind of like billiard referee gloves every time you want to move anything?
Well, we had this joke on tour because we got all our acrylic cases obviously on tour, which for all the keyboards are built into. And at one point, Howard had like chrome KX5s. So literally, the guy who was the roadie would carry it around with a pair of those sort of gloves because it was just looking crap under the lights every time he brought it on with all his finger marks all over it. So we ended up using surgical latex gloves because they don't leave fingerprints.
Right. And also handy if you. So a man like yourself who's moving from town to town, it sounds like one of those kind of sounds like the basis for a kind of Raffles type gentleman criminal sort of story. Howard Jones moonlighting as some kind of bank robber with all. Well, I just found the gloves, sir, and I thought that they would be useful for something. I didn't want to see them go to waste. Oh, sorry.
I was going to say one thing. I've got one little tip for studio stuff which I found. Griffin make these this stand that's designed for a laptop, and it's basically like two sort of C-shaped bits of bent aluminium with like a perspex bar that goes top and bottom, and it's designed that you can put a laptop above something else on the desk. But it works perfectly for little synths and stuff. And you can get about 20 quid.
That sounds good. Mark, you were just about to show us.
Yeah, I was just going to say. I know. My chat. You probably can't see that.
Yeah, no, I can't see that. Well, it's
completely clear. But
that's what I've got, yeah.
I mean, they're like $3 or something. And
that's
you
useful.
Can just buy them and you can sort of stick things underneath them because you can see them and things. I mean, unless they've got buttons, I suppose.
I suppose so. Gaz, what about you? I know you're a man who likes to everything in his place. Well, you've got limited space, so one tends to have to do that. I know what we do is I use bags of rice to put things on stand over there, so things are lifted up by put bags of rice for £1 in a sort of shape. I mean, you can get proper sort of, those are the sort of things you can get for film sets, which are special beanbag things, but they're so ridiculously expensive, and you can buy a bag of rice for sort of 49p. But that's my tip.
But isn't that in a paper bag?
No, it's in a plastic bag.
It spill out.
No, some rice comes in very thick polythene.
Rice everywhere.
No, I wouldn't want that to happen. Anyway, Gaz, over to you.
I did mention a couple of weeks ago about these the IKEA foot shelf things.
Oh, yeah.
So you can see there on the top of there's like a...
Yes, I see.
Because they've got that ridge, and things are tilted towards you, it just works surprisingly well.
I did...
And they look okay as well, they don't, you don't look at them and think, oh, that looks like an IKEA foot rack.
Somewhere you might put your slippers. Well, I tell you what. While we're on the subject of IKEA, if you're looking, but perhaps you didn't want to spend all that money on one of those. There's this thing which is like a laptop stand, which is £2.90 from your local IKEA. So that is a considerable saving and essentially performs a similar function. But
that's exactly like mine. Only mine are made of perspex.
Right. There we go. Well, there we go. Anyway, that was just a little thing. I spotted that yesterday. In fact, that was spotted by DK Sounds. So thanks so much. Right, there's another interesting story. Let's go. Oh, yeah, this was from you, Robbie. This is a thumb pan thingy. That's all I can say what it is. I don't know what else to call it. Oval. Hangdrum, that's it. I don't think it makes this noise, but this is just to show how futuristic and wonderful it is. It looks kind of interesting.
We've been developing the oval instrument for more than 2 years, and we are really excited that other people will be able to play with it.
Discover a new way of playing. We'd like you to meet the Oval. It is a next-generation percussive digital instrument, and you could be one of the first players.
The Oval is a digital music.
You can watch the whole thing. It's a Kickstarter project. Let's have a look. Where's it got to? It's got to something like 84,000 euros of 100,000 with 38 days to go. I think that's quite promising. Essentially, it's a Bluetooth MIDI USB. I don't know if you've ever seen people play hang drums. You generally find them in most European cities, like a Montmartre, and I saw a chap in Brussels actually at the Royal Place Royal just down the road from there playing one, and it's quite. It's a sort of it goes in the way, it's gong, didgeridoo, hang drum, all in the same kind of breath, you might say. That would be the sort of thing. What was it that sparked your interest with this, Robbie? Are you looking for a...
Yeah, no, I've always liked it. I've used libraries. I've always liked the sound. I know Guy Sigsworth has used it a lot with Through, and I know Imogen Heap's used it a lot, and Kate Havnovic and all sorts of people. So I just thought it was interesting. It was interesting. It was an interesting aside to have a controller in that kind of format.
Yeah, it's a very it encourages that kind of when you're playing things with drums, because you can use that sort of twist of finger and little finger and thumb. You can get really kind of quite rapid playment and stuff. So it does look quite interesting. Dave, you're a drummer. Would you rather be beating on this than tapping your desktop, as it were? I mean, it could be quite useful because you can set the scales up. You can, it looks like it's got XY positioning and all sorts of other things as well. It's going to be about €350, I reckon, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it does look kind of interesting. Yeah, he said the words "next generation," which kind of made me go.
Yeah, that was almost as bad as what's the other one? Game changing. He didn't use that.
Yeah, revolutionary.
He does say an instrument for musicians by musicians. He says that in there as well.
That's
well,
our
I've never heard that one
that's our
before.
tagline. Hold on. Does he also say since 19? No,
I thought it was interesting. Yeah, I'm not sure because these. It's funny actually. They're called hang drums, aren't they? The real things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which of course I think somebody I know christened them hand jobs, and I don't know. There's something about them. Does this kind of reverberate in the same way, or is it just a kind of solid mass? I know that it's pressure sensitive and stuff like that.
Just a controller. Doesn't make any sound.
And that's cool because I was thinking, well, at least you could turn them down because they, if you're at a party or something like that and somebody brings one of these real things, they can get a bit irritating after an hour.
Well,
it's the wind chimes that do it for me.
They're only one key, aren't they? So this means you can use it in all sorts of different keys.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
And that's the big downer with the normal hang drum. They're very expensive, but they are quite key limited. So it's like
they look like woks to me, upside down. But...
yeah.
They're not just very expensive, but there's also a waiting list because there's a chap here in Glastonbury who plays one of them on the high street, and he told me that he had to wait for a really long time to buy it.
That's right.
Something like 2 or 3 years, I think.
Wow.
But then, bizarrely, when I walk past his house now, he seems to have half of one nailed to the front of his house.
That's the wok.
Hi, I live here.
I'm a hang drummer.
Yeah, but... I need to try and be positive about them.
You want to say something bad, I can tell.
I want to say something. It's like going on, a synth and doing one of those great big washy choir things and then just leaving that running for the whole track and then thinking you've made like a lovely piece of new age music. And it's like, it just sounds like the same thing over and over again. And it's like, I like innovation and I don't hear anything innovative. So the positive, so that's what I'm saying negative about the hang drum. So I guess the positive thing is that if you can change the key, that's something in itself, right?
Well,
because
if you trigger,
it's a MIDI controller over Bluetooth, so you can connect it to anything in the studio at all.
I mean, it could be interesting if you can play
nice
those
things,
patterns.
They're comfortable. They're comfortable things to hold, so you can sit and have them on your lap and play. There's not a lot of instruments, like a guitar, but a lot of percussion instruments, you can't necessarily be so, they're quite mellow. They're quite a mellow.
It seems to be comprised of people sitting in the park with one on their lap. It seems to be
exactly
kind of way.
But
I guess if you used it for drums,
if you're
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, if you're controlling like a really nice analog polysynth or something really beautiful with it, and you're just sitting there, it's just, as a way of expressing yourself and playing it, and you've picked some really choice notes, some really clashing kind of nasty notes or whatever you want, you could make it, I think, a pretty cool. I'm into it. I think it's cool.
Yeah, well, I don't know when. I should probably sort of. Early Bird's getting 50 units. Let's have a look. I'm just going to the website.
It's going to be €599 when it comes out. It's 350 or 399 on the Kickstart.
March 2016, and only ships to certain countries. I'm not quite sure what that means, but I guess that's...
There's a very similar kind of thing for sale on Glastonbury High Street in a shop called Enlightenment, and they sell all sorts of different sound things. And these things are made from the bottom half of a Calagas canister, and then they cut out the shape of the resonator in the bottom half of it, and then those things... But again, they're stuck to one musical key or tuning or pitch or whatever, and that just never appeals to me because I want to be able to go... to different places with it. And if you're kind of locked and stuck in one thing. So I guess, if you want to be in that world and you want to do something, this could be a cool thing.
I guess that's probably why you don't see bands of hang drum players, because I guess to get them tuned... I mean, they probably are tuned to some sort of, golden ratio, and they have a sort of I imagine it's like with gongs and cymbals and things. There's a certain note that seems to work better. Energy and all that kind of stuff.
They're all tuned to solfeggio in Glastonbury, and solfeggio, of course, is 174, 285, 396, 417, 528, 639 hertz. All clashing notes, don't actually resonate nicely with each other at all. So it's this clangorous noise coming off them, But,
you wouldn't want to live next to somebody who was practicing.
No, but people seem to like it, don't they?
So. It does something. Anyway, that's the thing. If you want to check it out, it's the Oval, and
for that, they're doing well considering it's only just gone up.
Yeah, that's not bad, is it?
No,
not bad at all. Anyway, right. What's next? We did the thumb pan thingy. Nifty synth stand. Yes. Let's have a look here. Auphonic. Did anyone see this thing? Did I have a video for this? This was Auphonic. Let me see. I've got it here. This is Auphonic, which is purports to be a mixing system. The idea. That's what it says, but actually on closer auphonic.com, basically it enables you to. It says multi-track mix, but actually what I think it means is it's more for radio and music beds. So it'll pick out certain aspects of the, it'll duck and make the music in the background and bring it up. And so it's the sort of thing that you might use for radio productions, but it doesn't really say that. So I know, Mark, you got quite excited and thought, hey, what happens if I chuck an entire multi-track into it and see what happens?
I did that.
Oh, you seem to have, Mark. That's bizarre. You seem to have have an alarm across your face. There must be something in my diary on that machine. Hold on, I better check what it is. Embarrassing. Visit to the clinic or something.
I thought you put a post-it now. Playing that game where you've got to guess who you are.
There we go.
It's just a VAT return.
Who am I? What was I then? What were we talking about? Oh yeah, Auphonic. Is that right?
Auphonic,
yes. Yeah. I downloaded it. I thought, I wonder what happened if I put a Duran Duran master in it. So I took Ordinary World, which is across 48 tracks on the original master tape. 2 of those are SMPTE code, so I left them out, and 2 of them are silent because they're next to the SMPTE code. And I guess there were enough tracks to leave it that way. And then it just wouldn't process it at all. It just couldn't deal with it at all. So I was quite...
Yeah, I think that was it.
I wanted it to do it.
The press release kind of indicated that it was what it seems to be more for is radio production, voiceovers. Also, the other thing is perhaps if you're doing lectures, and there was quite a good demonstration which I haven't got lined up, unfortunately, where it'll pick out a question from the audience which might be off mic, and they'll pick that up and normalize it and set it to specific volumes. It's like batch processing, so it's something slightly different. So I think perhaps it seemed more exciting than it actually was.
Yeah.
But
the terminology, using the terminology multi-track, I'm like, yeah, we're like in 48 track world, but we're not, or more, but it just isn't. So I think they mean a music track and a dialogue track, don't they?
Yeah. Oh, there's somebody in the chat room spamming stuff. How annoying.
Really?
People got better things to do. Anyway, I can't really do much about that at the moment, so we'll just have to let it find itself out. Anyway, the whole thing about this that I thought was more interesting was perhaps this is there is a trajectory, isn't there? We got the Dan Dugan auto mixing thing, which works with multiple mics, which is more for conferencing. Are there any systems which almost do work in a kind of auto mixing sense? I mean, I'm wondering if, Robbie, you've come across anything that you kind of trust with any. I mean, I don't think you'd expect to put an entire mix into something like this and see, and have it working, but
I've never come across it. I mean, there was all that stuff, wasn't there, a few months ago about this automatic mastering software that was going to master your music for you.
Yeah.
Which I'm very skeptical of, I'm sure, like most other people, as to how that can ever be at all subjective as to the material, etc. But I haven't really come across anything automatic like that. I don't really see apart from what you're talking about in sort of post-production kind of ways, why on earth you would ever want something that supposedly tries to mix your music for you.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess the thing is, I was also thinking, well, actually, how we use compressors all the time to auto level things and create effect that is something that our ears are very much used to. So, I mean, aren't we kind of, when you bus a lot of things into a compressor and use that to kind of auto, isn't that essentially doing part of that job anyway?
I guess it is, but you make those decisions, don't you,
Yes,
based on the source material and what you want to go into what compressor and what you want to group with what. I mean, how does a bit of software make all those creative choices and make a good job of that? Because it's a totally subjective thing.
Yeah.
The software itself has got some control, so it's not just completely
I've got a screen grab here actually.
So you can basically tell it something's foreground or
background, and I think that's why it really is. This is the cloud version. I mean, the thing that's actually quite useful with it is you can do things like, if you wanted to batch process a bunch of things, you can add metadata, you can convert it to a specific kind of thing, you can filter it, you can auto limit, you can do, so in terms of a batch processor, I could see maybe it was useful for taking a whole load of files that were perhaps not normal, not of a specific loudness.
And normal.
Yeah, well, you know what I'm saying. So it does have some use. So there's definitely something that could be useful there, but I don't think it's quite the magic mixing bullet that we were thinking of.
I think I was incredibly mean to it, and it probably didn't stand a chance with what I was trying to get it to do. So it does actually look like it's got some uses. Having looked at it, it does look like it could be useful for stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know, Gaz, do you think there's any future in this kind of notion, though? Because, I mean, as software does get more intelligent, there are going to be...
Well, I think a really interesting test would be like the Hey Jude test or something like that, where you take a multi-track that's beautifully mixed by, of a big famous hit record, and have that as an algorithm. And then to test these software mixes out, you give it a perfectly mixed track and then tell it to mix it. And then there should be no change. But how much it changes the perfectly mixed track, you would get this kind of weird sort of effect, wouldn't you? And it'd be quite an interesting way of
you could phase reverse one against the other.
How their algorithms are kind of working,
You could do a difference test by phase reversing the original against the one that it mixed, and then you could listen to what it did differently.
Yeah, I suppose so. Anyway, Dave, I mean, you're a software developer. I mean, I don't suppose... I mean, you don't have any sort of auto patch creation. Do you have that kind of random patch generation in any of your stuff? I don't recall seeing it anywhere.
No, I don't want to put me out of a job.
No, of course not.
Just kind of do it up random. Oh, they're better than Dave's patches. Get rid of him. No, I don't know. I thought this was kind of interesting. I did a vid the other day, and I was trying to, I kind of did the voice as I was doing it, and kind of noodled around. But I had the music on sort of separate tracks, if you could call it music. And then I thought, I'll go in and do some smart stuff, and I'll do the ducking, and it sidetracked me. It kind of took me out of the zone. And I thought today when I saw this and listened to some of the demos, I thought, that would have been interesting if I could have just slammed it while I was kind of doing my thing, just sort of chucked it online, and then was at least able to listen to the result and go, will I use that or will I not? That might have been quite interesting.
Yeah, I guess.
Because I thought some of the ducking stuff was quite good. Actually, some of the de-reverb stuff was pretty good. Removing the ambience from the guy who was talking in the hall and stuff like that. I thought, it's got potential.
I guess it's the sort of thing that you'd imagine iZotope would be working on with sort of batch, because they've got all the tools for doing that kind of stuff. You could imagine, all of their things brought together. There's something in amongst it. I mean, obviously, most of their stuff is going to be used for creative professional use rather than just going through things and fixing things. But I'm guessing that batch processing via iZotope plugins is going to make sense, which probably is a good point to mention. A word from our sponsor. How do you think that is for smooth? Perfect. Right. I'll play the ad and then we'll talk about it. So, as you know, iZotope sponsor the show, and sometimes the ad plays, sometimes it doesn't. There it is. Ozone 6.1, this is kind of the de facto mastering suite, really. Got key features, essential mastering tools, equalizer, dynamics, maximizer, exciter, post-equalizer, dither, dynamic EQ, which is advanced only. You can harness the sonic texture of classic analog gear with even deeper digital control, make smarter mixed decisions aided by robust, real-time visual feedback throughout the modules. You can achieve, authentic sounds for any genre and really improve either individual tracks or entire mixes. If you want to check it out, go to iZotope.com/Ozone and you get a 10-day free demo, as with all of their products. And of course, if you were listening at episode 404, which was a couple of weeks ago, you will know that there was, in fact, a competition, and we ran a competition. It's a Twitter competition. We have a winner. The winner is this chap. He's called Thomas Griffin. And I can't, hold on a minute, let me just make this a little bit larger. I can read that. Thomas Griffin, and he is called 9Rifter, at 9Rifter, which is his Twitter handle. He tweeted, we asked you to tweet at Sonic State, at iZotope Inc., the Mix Doctor, and the hashtag Ozone 6. Everyone loves Summit for Nout. So I'm guessing he might be from the West Country. So congratulations, Thomas Griffin. Do get in touch with us on the iZotope Ferry. We'll pass that on to you. And if you want to win this week, we've got another competition, as is iZotope's one. We thank them very much. And you need to do the same thing. Basically, you just need to tweet this, which is the hashtag Mightier Mixes and the hashtag Ozone 6 to at Sonic State and at iZotope Inc. That's the hashtag Mightier Mixes, that's one word, and Ozone 6 with a 6 at the end to at Sonic State and at iZotope Inc. And once again, we do thank iZotope for their sponsorship of the show, and good luck in the competition. We had a lot of entries for the last one, so Thomas, you are a very lucky fellow, so do get in touch and we'll let you know. Right.
I think you needed that ducker then.
I usually do.
That
actually,
was a bit loud.
Well, maybe that was it, but it wouldn't do it real time. You see, I do have a ducker set up on this, but obviously it wasn't running at that particular.
It wasn't ducking quite as much as it needed to.
It wasn't.
But I think there was a certain irony in that.
Yeah, no,
that's fun.
You're absolutely right. There certainly is. That's clearly what I need. Right. Something like preset. Right, look, we got a couple of these, and I think what we'll do is we'll start with Presonus Studio 1.3, which has just come out. It has been a fairly major upgrade to the Studio One. I mean, this is quite a new door on the scene, and it's probably one of the newest. I guess Bitwig is a little bit newer, but there's been a lot of iterations, a lot of kind of developments. I think some of the original coders behind Cubase were involved in Studio One, and and this latest iteration adds an awful lot of things. One of the really interesting ones, I've got a video here I can play. No, that's not it. That's the wrong video for the wrong topic. I'll have to go with that later. But I thought I had a video, but it looks like I haven't got one sorted out. But Gaz, I know you've been using Studio One, and the Studio 1.3 adds some interesting things. I mean, we've got an arranger track, which I know is something that Cubase has. But there's also this thing called Scratch Pad, which allows you to kind of open a multiple window and just drop elements of the arrangement and mess around with them, and then without changing your originals, and then bring them back. Which those are the sort of things which I think, actually that's pretty innovative. There is some innovation going on here. Have you had a chance to see the new features?
Yeah, I mean, Scratch Pad, I think I don't think I've seen that before in a DAW. The arranger track is something, actually, it looks very much like the same way that you can do it in Reaper, the way you can move things around. Reaper's been able to do that sort of region. You define a region in your DAW, and you can copy it, duplicate it, move it around, create new arrangements. But this idea of the Scratch Pad, when you click a button, it creates like a border comes down the middle of the screen, and it creates two workspaces. So you've got your existing arrangement track, and then you've got this kind of like playground, if you will, and you can just grab components from the main track, just drag it into this other window, try out arrangements, chop up little bits. If you don't want to have loads of complicated stuff going on in your main window, do the kind of editing business in the Scratch Pad, bring it back directly in, and plonk it back in the arrangement. And then you could have multiple Scratch Pads. You could just name the Scratch Pad. You could say, that Scratch Pad 1, you could just say, maybe you chopped up a guitar solo out of 8 takes, and you just arranged them around like a scruffy old kind of bedroom. And then you just, and then you can get it back. You can go back to that workspace, very, very cool, and I would be very surprised if that idea or iterations of that idea doesn't get widespread use in the other DAWs too.
How would that work with, like, if you've got lots of embedded layers of automation? Because that's always the bane of my life with some of the stuff I do, when it gets incredibly complex with like perhaps 5 or 6 lanes of automation on per track on some things, and then you start going, somebody says, oh, you just put another chorus in here or put a bit on the end, and you start, it's like a minefield. You have to like really check what you're doing when you chop stuff out and join it together or expand it. How does it deal with all that sort of business, do you know?
Well, Studio One is a bit more kind of modular. You can have more, so you can have certain automations in the clip. So when you move the clip, it's not part of a line that's running along a track. It's kind of similarly with Studio One, you can drag VST plugins and drop them onto a clip. So you have multiple instances of a VST plugin that only happens when the play bar reaches it. So it's a slightly different, and that's been in the beginning. That's been in Studio One from the start. But I'd imagine that helps with this process of doing stuff in the scratch pad. Something you should mention about the scratch pad is that all the tracks line up. So if you've got sort of plugins running on that track, if it's on that track in the scratch pad, it will go through that mixing channel. So.
Can you? This was the one thing. Could you actually have a different number of tracks in the scratch pad? So you might go, "Oh, I'll just try this overdub on this one and then add it," or does that all kind of mess things up because of the alignment?
Don't know. That's a good idea. Don't know.
I don't know. I mean, I'm guessing, Robbie, you're sort of thinking that there are obviously some innovations that still need to be done, because I mean, there's some, a complicated arrangement or mix in a DAW is a very complex sort of data structure, data object. So it's about sort of managing that well. So I mean, there's still a long way to go in terms of making these things less wieldy, right?
I mean, I know Logic now you can embed automation into clips, which is a big help. Because I mean, I used to have to do the old caper of drawing on empty regions, on the main arrange window to allow automation to get moved. Because if it wasn't kind of on top of a clip, automation would stay where it was when you drag stuff around. So, we've been finding ways for years to try and deal with it, but certainly when you get a complicated cue for a score or something, it's still quite a kind of, you have to kind of psych yourself up to deal with it all, and everything, so you can see all the automation and carefully check what it's still quite an effort to do it. Whereas that sounds quite a nice idea of certainly being able to try things out quickly. Because if you've got a client and they just say, can you do this, this, and this? Sometimes you have to go, hang on a minute, it's going to take me 20 minutes while I just
save as, but yeah.
So I do like the idea of that, and I know some of the stuff Gaz has shown me from the latest version of Cubase. I mean, there's some really great innovations in things like Cubase, and I think it's just that catch-up thing, isn't it? I'm sure we'll see some of the things that are great in Cubase making their way into the next version of Logic or Pro Tools, whatever. Everyone kind of looks at everybody else, I think.
I think there is something to remember here as well, though, that Studio One, this is version 3, whereas, Cubase and Logic, they're on to, double digits or whatever.
Yeah.
So, and my thing with Studio One has always been, I've always felt there's been a few bits and bobs missing from it, that it didn't have the killer features to sort of really blow me away. But I think some of this actually does go some way to addressing that. And I think when you get into this idea of objects, I think Samplitude was the first piece of software that really that really sort of promoted this way of working, of, the clip being much more than just a sort of a window on a file, but, it's something when you move it around, you put plugins into it, you build automation into it. If you split it, you've split 2 units of, etc. And I think that there's lots and lots of advantages of it working that way. I'm interested in this thing I've talked about a number of times, where you can just have you only have one actual audio track, and you can have as many objects on this track as possible, and you just do away with the whole track idea altogether. You just have objects that just exist along a timeline.
That's not a bad idea. I know, Dave. Have you? I mean, presumably you might have come across this just purely from getting your plugins working in various different DAW environments. And from what I hear, Studio One has actually got a pretty massive user base. I think somebody was telling me it's like 200,000 or 300,000 people already.
Wow.
Yeah, could be. It's funny actually. I downloaded the demo of this, and it wouldn't authorize it. I just got a server error thing, so I kind of thought, oh, maybe temporary glitch in the system or whatever. But what was interesting from my perspective is when this was released, I had quite a few emails from people saying that they were using the multi-instrument part with various versions of our stuff and other people's instruments, saying that it was really awesome because hadn't they done it with effects chains?
Yeah.
And now
it's
they've
very similar.
done it with instruments.
They've taken a very good idea out of Guitar Rig. Guitar Rig's always been able to sort of embed split, frequency split or pan split, and they've essentially put that. If you're familiar with that in Guitar Rig, then that's the kind of paradigm that they've done. But then, as Dave, pass it back, Dave. But you can do that with VST instruments as well. So you can create splits, via various things, by frequency or by pan.
Oh wow.
Well,
cool. So it's not simply just a case of layering stuff. It's more complex than that.
I mean, the one thing that I saw that is really cool, I mean, there's a 30-day free trial, which I think is a really, really good move. So you can download a 30-day free version that will work for 30 days, and you can really check that whole thing out. And I know, Mark, I mean, we're not... I mean, that's the thing. I mean, moving DAWs, as we know, it's a major it's a major pain in the bum, frankly. So I mean, it's the sort of thing that you've got to be sure. So that sort of demo is the sort of thing that we like to see in this world, right?
I wonder. I was thinking about this the other day. I think moving versions. I think moving from one year to the next is a major feat in music technology, because I was trying to think about which digital audio workstation had the most compatibility through all the versions. So even in Pro Tools, if I load something from Pro Tools version 5 into my most recent version of Pro Tools, it seems pretty compatible, but loads of plugins and things get broken. And as I've noticed with plugins, that as you go through iterations of plugins from plugin version 1 to plugin version 2 to plugin version 3, because of the way VST works particularly, plugin version 2 doesn't know that it's meant to be looking for settings from plugin version 1. So if you take plugin version 1 off the system, then that no longer works. And I think the only compatibility that we've got with digital audio workstations now is to print everything to stems. And I should have been doing that for years and years and years, but I probably didn't have the hard drive space to do it 20 years ago. Now I do. Maybe I should go back and try and fix everything and have things to hand that are printed to stems. Now, when you think about the whole digital audio workstation thing like that, then if your flow is always to print things to stems at the end of things so that you've got the sounds that you used always going forward into the future, then that means you can jump from any digital audio workstation to any other digital audio workstation to utilize whatever features are present in that workstation at this time. So I don't need to go back to Pro Tools 5 to run those sessions. I can just drag the stems into, say, Studio One, and then I can utilize some of the new features of Studio One and work on my song and kind of continue from there, and then end with putting everything back to stems again. So I'm sort of like thinking, well, maybe I've been making a mistake the way I've been doing it for years and years, and I should have been always making stems. And if you're always making stems, then that means you can use any audio workstation and just drag stuff in, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. Well, if you want to check it out, do go to Presonus.com. I think it's studio1.presonus.com and try it out. So I'm a little bit distracted because we've had a script attack on the chat room, and it's just flying loads of stuff back and everybody's up in arms, but it'll all be sorted by next week, hopefully. I did want to get onto this last topic because I know Dave wanted to talk about it last time, and this was I'll start with the video, just because well, not the video, the soundtrack. This is the sound of Imagination, classic 1980s Body Talk, and this came from a basically. Let's see if I can play this. I don't think I can. An interview with Tony Swain. I don't think I can have them both at the same time. There's an interview with Tony Swain on ARP Journal, a journal on the art of record production. And Tony Swain, this is by Jez Wells from April. And it's just a really interesting interview with Tony Swain. Started out his career back in those days. He was kind of not classically trained, but trained via a kind of old school producer engineer. But what was really interesting, I thought, about this whole thing was the way that when that record, it sounds quite current and contemporary now in many ways. I mean, obviously it's of an age, but they were saying that, what they were doing is pushing the envelope by doing stuff like, right, okay, that sounds great. Now just turn the bass drum up by 6 dB as a sort of figure, and then it'll be even better. And all these kind of like just things, they were, well, let's just ignore what you're supposed to do. And what happens if you do this? And that kind of created this new, certain elements of new sound. I mean, obviously within the paradigms of what's acceptable on TV and radio and what have you. And no, Dave, you were kind of quite keen to talk about this. I confess, I didn't know anything about Tony Swain. Have you got any extra info on him? Because he's worked with a hell of a lot of people. I mean, he's really, got a massive track record.
It's quite funny, actually. When you sent this through a few weeks ago, and I kind of went and had a glance. I thought, I'm sure I've worked with this person, and I went off trying to find whether he was the person I'd worked on this album with, and it wasn't him at all. It was Pete Vale and Miles Waters that I'd worked with. So that kind of sent me off a curveball. But there's no great long thing that I wanted to say about this. It was just that the Roland SH1000 was kind of my first synth that I got to use, and I know it's a big favourite of Mark Doty's. And in the late 70s, early 80s, I was playing in a lot of funk bands, and mainly as a drummer, but I'd have to double as keys. And it was always like, what is it that makes that? What is that bass sound? Of course, we all thought it was this mythical Mini Moog, but then when we got our hands on the Mini Moog, it was like, it's just not right. It's not right. And then through this article, I find out that it is a Roland SH1000 that made those bass sounds. And I do understand it because it's got this button for portamento. And in fact, it mirrors a conversation. I don't know, I'm going to go off on one slightly here, but a question that's been in mine and Chris's head for, since the 70s, was David Essex going to make you a star? What was the synth that played that lead? And we were so lucky in that Ken Freeman came down here, and he was a guy who played keyboards on it, and we did this massive long interview with him, and at the end of it we said, do you mind if we ask you this question, because you played on all that stuff, huh? What was the synth? And he said it was the ARC 2600. It was double tracked, because I got paid twice in those days. But the glide was triggered from that glide button, which of course we know is on the 2600 and we know is on the SH1000. So this was a kind of epiphany moment for me, going, those bass sounds. Now this has got to be double tracked and sweetened up and harmonized. There must be loads of processing, because I can tell you the SH1000 was not that much of a fat synth, whereas those Imagination bass sounds were.
I thought it was that bloke playing the fretless bass with the cornrows.
Yeah. And I think it kind of morphed into that later on. But there was this time where it was like, what is that synth? Anyway, that's just all. It's a shame Mark's not on here, because I think both of us could probably go on for hours and hours about the SH1000.
Oh, well, there you go. I mean, that's interesting. I don't know, Robbie, I'm guessing you're probably a little bit young to maybe be influenced by some of these records, but I mean, they definitely had a real sound to them, and it's kind of interesting that level of kind of, I don't know, let's just break the rules and try this, was kind of, they got away with it somehow, because it feels like, oh no, you can't possibly do that back in those days, because it would have been not the done thing. And now you could just kind of go crazy with that kind of stuff, electronically. It's much easier to be very out there and wrong.
There's very few times, isn't there, where you feel like you're really being like that. I mean, it's like I was talking about the first time you hear a track you've done on the radio, or the first time, all these things you have in your musical career or your creative career. You have that kind of excitement that first time that one of those kind of landmark things happens, and it's never quite the same again. And I guess it's the case with those kind of musical things, when a lot of stuff was just being tried out and, being pioneered, people suddenly did have those moments where they thought, this is actually really cool, and I don't think anyone's done this before. I don't know whether people really get that now, because it's just like, is it, you know, there isn't that kind of same thing going on, really.
I suppose everything is extreme already, really. Yeah. There isn't, you know, so there's less of it. I think that's a fair point, yeah. I know, what do you think, Gaz? Have you come across Tony Swain's work before?
No. I do remember the tragic sound once of going around a corner too fast in an Austin Allegro, and to hear the SH1000, which was just loose in the back, just sliding across, and pop, 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 as all those little kind of flip down keys on the bottom of. They're great synths. So it's one of the first synths I ever got to know. Really, was the SH1000. I think they're lovely. But so if that is the key to the Tony Swain sound, I think that's a interesting thing.
That's what it looks like. There's the glide button right there. It's quite a basic synth, isn't it? I mean, it's
very basic.
Yeah,
but the sound's got a really nice
wood.
The rotundness to it.
Formica, I think you'll find that's chipboard covered with Formica.
Yeah, but didn't the guy out of Imagination called Lee? Didn't he spell his name Lee?
Lee, that's right. Bizarrely.
L-triple-E, wasn't it?
That's right. It's funny, but while I was in Brussels, there's a festival on there, I think later on this month, and it was it's like a kind of, I guess it's an 80s thing or whatever, and it was featuring Lee Johns of Imagination, so he's playing there. So I guess he's still doing his thing. I know, Mark, did you come across this chap before? I mean, it sort of seems like... Oh, you have?
I have. So in the early 80s, I was in lots of sort of goth bands, but I told everybody that I wasn't a goth. And my introduction to synthesis was via the SH101, and I was obsessed with that bass line, actually, the Imagination Music and Lights bass line, and the slide, particularly the slide. And I got very close to it, actually, with an MC202 or an SH101, and I wrote lots of songs with bass lines that were probably real plagiarism of that bass line, because I think it's like the coolest bass line. It's just that bump, bump, bump. That slide up is what makes it completely. So, yeah, I mean, what else can I say about that? I think it's one of my favourite bass lines ever.
Wow.
If I've got the right song.
What's that song called?
Music and Lights.
Music and Lights. Yeah, it goes dun 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 dun.
Yeah, there we go. All right, maybe we could do a doo-wop version. Okay, well, what?
Something like that.
Thanks, AIB Lee John. I can dance like him.
But
yeah, but you'd have to wear a glittery nappy, Dave.
Just so happens.
Just say the word.
It has to be said.
I can take my Marmite crisp bag and turn it inside out.
He's a very nice gentleman.
Sorry, what was that, Robbie?
We've done quite a few gigs over the years where he's been playing. He's a very nice gentleman.
Yeah, no, I'm sure he is. Oh, there we go. He's got the. It was definitely a look of its time. Anyway, I'm glad we did finally get to talk about that, and I very much enjoyed your enjoyed and also didn't enjoy your anecdote about the SH1000 sliding across the back of a van. That's a terrible. That's just those sort of moments when you think. I remember once the guy that I used to play bass with in the band. He built, because he was a bass. He built a single 18-inch bass cab out of chipboard, massive, 18-inch woofer. It's like, they're huge, great things. I mean, you don't find bass cabs with those. And it took him ages and ages and ages. And we went to a rehearsal, and all we had was a Morris Minor to put it in, and we managed to get it. Was like, just managed to get it in the back seat, this thing, and then I just remember getting it out, and it slipped, and the door handle just went straight through the cone of his 18-inch speaker, which is probably the single most expensive element of that. I mean, it sounded terrible because it was just an 18-inch speaker. I didn't have any sort of upper content whatsoever. But it was. I just remember that moment. He did rather lose his temper. I don't blame him, but he wasn't the one who was actually lifting it at the time, which that's just the way things go. So,
maybe he should have been.
Well, exactly. That was kind of my argument at the time, but it wasn't really the right time to have that sort of discussion.
I found a 15-inch speaker in a fairground when I was 16, and I used to go to rehearsals with it on the back of a Pooch Maxi moped. I used to put it on the back, and I'd sit there with my arm on it, and then
one-handed.
Yeah. And it was huge and very heavy, and it used to make the bike really unstable.
Wow.
Yeah, punk days.
I do. Well, I remember before lifts, when I got my MS-10, and I used to carry it around in a box, and I had to walk all the way down a really long. It was about 1.5 miles from my house to where we used to rehearse, and I just remember that feeling of holding this box for probably 3/4 of an hour like this, and just the strain it put on my mind. But I never dropped it, and it never went wrong. But I mean, that's funny when you see guitarists and they just got their little soft cases over there, and you just think, oh, it's so easy for you just going to rehearsal, assuming you haven't got to take your cab with you and stuff.
That's what I really liked about
Sorry,
Depeche Mode guys. That's what I really liked about them. They just used to get on the train, didn't they, on the underground with their synths to go to a gig or go to rehearsals. Vince Clarke was quite well known for that.
Oh, that's brilliant.
I always noticed that whenever I was in bands when I was a teenager, the drummer always had a girlfriend with a car. Did anyone else notice that? Did your girlfriend have a car, Dave?
No, I had the car, but my girlfriend was the roadie. That was the law. I couldn't just help me. I'll tell you what, it was brilliant, because when I got the Simmons kit, it was like, you could see this look of relief on her face. Oh, brilliant. It's only this like small electronic. And then came the personal PA.
Yeah, the personal PA, but I also need my real bass drum. Yeah.
Yeah, and my real snare, and my cymbals, and my real hi-hat. No, I got a great SH-1000. It was like the first gig I ever did with a synth, but I was playing this kind of grand piano and then the SH-1000 on top. And in fact, it's funny because the guitarist in this band, which was just a kind of complete Santana rip-off, everything, major seventh, minor seventh, he's now gone on to become quite a big smooth jazz guitarist. He's quite well known in America. But it's kind of high expectations. And I rented this SH-1000 from Anderton's in Guildford, which involved going to Guildford on the train from Reading and then taking it back on the train and then having it for like a week and then taking it back. And, it had the screw in the back to tune it. And, of course, I'd been noodling around on this thing, and they're like, it's a synthesizer. And, of course, we're expecting it to sound like a Moog modular, but actually it's this sort of relatively thin, weedy thing. And but we put it through PA and we kind of put it through reverb. And, rehearsals, it sounded great. And I'd mentioned about the whole tuning pain in the arse. And this guy, who was a well-known local joker, just before the gig came in with a screwdriver and just turned the tuning thing. So when I launch into this synth solo, it's just totally out of tune. And then I spend the rest of the night trying to work out, okay, is it in another key? Because I didn't, realise that there was this thing round the back. That's what had happened.
Oh, what a swipe.
The tuning knobs. It was really very entertaining. Of course, people at the end of it were going, man, that synth sounded shit.
Which indeed it probably would have done.
Can I tell you my bad tuning story?
No, go ahead.
I did a festival.
I've got one as well.
I did a festival, an 80s festival with Hal and loads of other artists about 4 years ago, and a band who shall remain nameless turned up, who I don't think do very much gigging. They do occasional gigs. They kind of come out of mothballs and do the occasional gig. Anyway, they brought these backing tracks, I should say, along. What it turns out they were basically their record where they'd done this kind of phase thing to try and get rid of the vocal. They basically, okay, that was the first thing. And they had it on a CD. And of course, the CD was skipping. And they wanted the band to play along. This was just a stereo thing. There wasn't even a click track. So it was a stereo file. They expected a band to play along to. What they didn't realise was it was also at the wrong sample rate, and it was playing in between keys. It was like a quarter tone. It was about a quarter tone. So anyway, they started up. The first track came on, and the band started to try along and play with it. And of course, they were like a sort of a third of a tone out of tune with it.
Oh.
And they battled on for 4 songs with it like this while we stood in ourselves. Yeah.
Oh, didn't we do a piece where there wasn't it like Guns N' Roses or something where there was a sample rate mismatch on the playback, and there was somebody was just singing Van Halen, was it? Yeah, and it was just it was really uncomfortable. That's terrible when that sort of thing happens. Technology bites you on the bum. So, but Mark, you had a story as well.
Yeah, my story is John Taylor with a whammy pedal. I'm sure he won't mind me telling the story. He had his roadie had tuned his bass and handed him the bass. He started this song and he started playing, and it was just so wildly out of tune that he stopped the song and gave it back to the roadie, who then retuned it and gave it back to him. They started the song, he played it again, and then he was standing there winding this bass thing round and round, trying to get the damn thing in tune, but not realizing that he'd got his whammy pedal engaged. So then he kind of pretty much threw the bass at the roadie again, and they gave him a different bass. And then all these other roadies were saying to us lot who work for Duran, like, don't you guys know what the hell you're doing? It's like, you know, don't you know how to tune a guitar? And we're like really puzzled. And then the light went on and he realized he'd got the whammy pedal engaged, and kind of it all went back to normal.
Oh, that's
for about 2 minutes. I think it was the worst kind of, you know, when the audience is kind of standing there waiting for something to happen, and we're all like flustered and running around trying to like fix this problem, but we couldn't work out what the hell was wrong.
Ouch.
Yeah. And at the end, bless him, he came up to the roadie and he said, look, I'm sorry about that. I'm probably not grown up enough to have effects pedals yet, which I thought was a really sweet thing to say, because he could have continued to blame everybody for it, but I mean, obviously he kind of held his hand up and went, I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, that's a very embarrassing moment, isn't it? That's not what you really want to have happen at all at any kind of live event. Yeah, that tuning issue. I don't play live, fortunately, very often, but when it goes wrong, it is incredibly uncomfortable. But that's the sign of true professional, isn't it? Is being able to kind of somehow draw something out from the ashes of a disaster into something that is going to work again. But
yeah, with a synth, it's easy. When in doubt, just put it on sample and hold. Go.
That makes sense.
Nothing to do with me.
Yeah, that could work. That's interesting.
Can I just say one more thing before you cut it off? I enjoyed your kind of presentation of the new up and coming Roland.
Yes, I was going to make the EFX one.
After I saw that, I thought, right, I really want to get those. So
they are really. But that reminds me what I was about to say, because the thing about those, they're brilliant. But if you've programmed a load of weird stuff to get like 6 submodules doing some random stuff behind it, and you don't know that that's what they're doing, then you switch it on and it's like, what the hell's going on here? You have no clue as to what might be going on, and that is actually the only downside, because there's no status to say I'm modified, and that's one thing. So one thing that Dave, because there's 2 ways of modifying the stuff. You can either plug your phone or your laptop in and it squirts the real-time parameter changes as little audio blips, or you send the whole setup in, or you can do it via MIDI over USB, in which case it's all real time, because otherwise it's like you turn the knob, you let go, and it sends the parameter then. But I thought it was really interesting, actually, and while I was doing it, my mind was just kind of like, wow, this means you could do this, you could do, and there's all sorts of stuff you could do with it, and I'm really quite excited at trying them out. I don't know if you saw that, Dave, but it really made sense of what they're doing and what it's for. I guess the only downside is the power requirements. It's quite a hefty chunk of power it requires for each one, 450 milliamps.
I looked at most of the kind of 4MS and tip top power supplies, and they only support like about 1200 milliamps. I don't know what you're going to do to power that. I mean, they're 450 milliamps each, so I think the only way at the moment would be like a guitar effects pedal kind of multi-power supply in the back of your rack, or a 4-way.
Yeah, and I think that would make sense, and that wouldn't be too hard. You just need a little hole to put those in, So there are going to be workarounds, and I think Roland also are going to be introducing their own cases, which either. But I mean, and this is one of the problems. This is one of the things that people don't understand. The reason that modular racks are so expensive, it's not the beautiful furniture about it. It's the power supplies, because they're open and they're, I mean, I haven't got mine to hand, because they're basically bespoke power supplies. They all have to be certificated, for the EU, for the US, and for a small manufacturer, creating a high wattage power supply that is certificated it's so expensive that it makes it really difficult. Whereas the smaller ones, I guess, must be, you could buy them off the shelf or whatever. So that's one of the issues, but that's across the board, because when you look at any of the sort of budget Eurorack mounting systems, the power supply is always just.
But I mean, though, you look at the size of the power supply though that comes with, say, the 9-volt power supply. I mean, surely you could build into the bottom of a Eurorack just like a four gang socket and just
Yeah, you could do that. Or like I say, you could get one of those little blocks that you can run a few guitar pedals
exactly.
from. There's some of those at rate of 500 milliamps an output. I mean, there's ways of doing it, but it's just not as elegant.
The pedal train Volta might work.
Yeah, but no, I was just saying, I thought it was really good. It totally opened my eyes to what they could do. So yeah, I think they're going to be great, those.
Yeah, I can't wait to get to try one out. Definitely. Okay, well, that seems like a good time to stop. And I'm sure our chat room people who are sick of seeing random characters go past, this is what's happening. And it's really, if there's anyone out there who knows how to configure an IRC server, if you wouldn't mind getting in touch, because I'm a bit out of my depth when it comes to this kind of stuff, and obviously it's spoiling it and it's just a kid, because they're putting silly names in there and stuff. So if we can just figure out a way to get rid of them, that would be great. So just get in touch with me, and you can talk me through it. But thank you ever so much, everybody. It was great. I know it was a bit distracting having all that going past. Before we go, just want to say again, if you want to enter the competition to win iZotope Ozone 6.1, you want to tweet the hashtag Mightier Mixes and the hashtag Ozone6 to @SonicState and @iZotope Inc. And you've also got some extra characters in there, so perhaps don't put that stuff in the chat room, but put something meaningful and witty. And I know that iZotope do read it, and we read it, and so, it's all very much appreciated. Also want to say this show is dedicated to my dear friend Rachel, who sadly passed away last week, and we're all going to miss her. But anyway, I just wanted to get that out there. Anyway, guys, thank you ever so much. Thank you, Robbie, for joining us this week. It's been a pleasure having you aboard. I hope your build goes okay next week, and maybe if I can, I'll come over and see you on Sunday. That would be great if I can get over.
Okay.
And also Gaz Williams too. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll see you very soon, I hope. Maybe a Studio 1.3 overview. We're trying to talk him into it.
Yeah, I think we should do that. I think it's definitely worth a look.
Okay, great. And also, Dave Spears, GeForceSoftware.com. Don't forget, go and get your 50% off on the sale. What was it? It was on Imposca 2, was it?
Imposca 2, yeah. I had something else to plug. I did a video on the cool 800 DV.
Oh, I saw some of that stuff. That looks really nice. It's a lovely looking machine, isn't it?
It's great sounding, yeah.
Yeah, nice one.
So anyway, yeah, because loads of people have been kind of going, when are you going to do another video for the GeForce YouTube site? So I have.
You have. Well, there we go. Well, thank you very much, Dave, for joining us. And also, Mr. Mark Tinley, thank you for joining me too. And great, your video looks absolutely fantastic today. So whatever you did pre-show, it just nailed it. Which, actually, that's a top tip, isn't it? If you've ever got any problems and you've got an external audio device and an internal audio device, make sure the sample rates match, because the system and the external will fight. And unless you've got a lot of computer grunt, it won't, nothing will win.
Talking about things fighting, I've got a request.
Okay.
As you know, I'm digitizing lots of VHS video, and I rewound one earlier on, and there was a noise inside the machine, like, and I took the tape out, and it has come off the end of the spool and eaten itself. So I need to buy a 1/2-inch splicing block, and I've contacted HHB and Studio Spares and Canford Audio, and nobody seems to sell them anymore. So if anybody's got a second-hand Edital or VHS 1/2-inch splicing block for sale, please email me.
There we go. Well, there you go. Okay, and that's it for this week. Thank you very much for joining us once again, and that was it. Sonic Talk 405 is now finished.